want, but you can go too far. You can overshoot the mark, and you can trap them in this fucking nightmare world of, you know, of retail horror.
Lovecraft, retail.
Well, depends what they're selling, really. But yeah, what I'm saying is that you can't overshoot the mark. Yeah. So it is important to be aware. Candle.
I'm not sure if I agree with that to the extent that you're going here. I can definitely see it when you're talking about something that is drudgery, something that is painful, almost difficult to read. But when you've got something that is adventurous, something that is enjoyable, something that is a constantly invigorating, constantly almost enervating to the soul. I commonly read things and thoroughly enjoy things that have no break from it whatsoever. There is no end to the adventure.
Did they have no conflict? Did they have no...
I didn't say that there wasn't a plot to it, but...
No, but what I mean is, an adventure is an adventure because you have a goal and you reach it. Right? This is the old-fashioned definition. This is what most folk tales are about. It's about reaching a goal. But those aren't without their internal contrast. There are moments where the heroes are absolutely depressed, where they are faced with the imminent threat of failure. And then through sheer chutzpah and magic and whatever, they reach their goal. You do have a series of contrasts. I know exactly what you're talking about. You have a series of contrasts between the fun of going on an adventure and overcoming obstacles, reaching your goal, and then as a contrast, you also have experiences where they're very down.
It's a contrast of it's definitely a contrast of the content, but I'm not sure if it's a contrast of the emotion.
All right,
I think is what we were talking about here, because when we were talking about the drudgery and the pain, that's very much almost a tangible feeling that everybody over the age of about 12 will be able to agree with or to understand. And while you maybe have a protagonist and they have their ups, they have their downs, they have those days when they know that they're going to fail, and those days when everything goes right for them. It's still the feeling of adventure from step one, every step along the way. Has
everyone in this room read The Two Towers by J.R. Tolkien? Has anyone not read? If you've seen the movie, that also counts. Is anyone unfamiliar with the Two Towers? Seriously, you've never the Lord of the Rings trilogy, neither the books nor the film. Wow. It's okay. Don't worry. Okay, so it's the second book in the trilogy. And it's really, really miserable. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
It's really fucking miserable. You've got Frodo and Sam. They're wandering alone. They're hungry. There's no source of water. You've got Merry and Pippin. They've been captured, and it's all really, really, really horrible. And then let's see, the Battle of I've seen the movie so many times. The Battle of Helm's Deep. Does that take place in the second book as well as in the second film?
Yeah.
It does, right? Because they move some shit around. But there it's also really miserable. It's rainy and they get their asses kicked. And, so there's just this constant oppression of just fucking misery. Nobody's comfortable, nobody's happy, nobody gets any rest. And as good as the book is, right, look into your souls and think, did you at any point feel like you were just being taken too far? Did you at any point feel like, okay, I'm just going to put the book down for a little bit? Obviously you came back to it later because it was a really good story. But wasn't it just a little bit too grating? Anyone want to disagree? And please do.
Definitely.
I disagree.
Just because. Right.
Because in that particular instance, that aspect of the book was less prominent than its narrative core. It's very, very strong, remarkable narrative drive. The fact that everyone's having a miserable time is kind of secondary to the fact that Tolkien was such a brilliant storyteller for various reasons.
Yeah, but I think that's more of a hurdle he overcame rather than something that added to the story experience.
I definitely don't disagree. I mean, that's the reason why you know, I picked the book up again and still love it. You know, don't get me wrong, it's totally worth it, that misery. But that doesn't mean that, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I certainly don't measure myself to Tolkien's standard quality, if only because I'm not nearly the kind of linguist that he is. But for us, let me see how I can put this a bit more diplomatically. We can definitely draw people in with the story that we tell, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that they're having a good time. You know, it's. I'm not saying that it's impossible to do, or that that it's too easy to get carried away, or that anyone is just writing stories that are either too miserable or too upbeat. But you lose the intensity, or you can lose the intensity, by not offering any breaks. For example, the second book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. What was that? Restaurant at the End of the Universe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it as funny as the first? No disrespect to the late Douglas Adams, who was absolutely brilliant. I loved all of the books right through the end, but was it as funny as the first?
Parts of it.
But then again, I don't think that any of the series were as funny as the first.
No.
But
And there's various reasons for that, but take as a contrast Discworld by Terry Pratchett. You can usually mention Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams in the same breath, with the exception that Terry Pratchett still draws bread. Yeah.
Oh, you went there.
Too soon? I don't know. But Terry Pratchett, okay, I'll admit I've read up to Hogfather, and after that I just sort of faded out. And so and that's like the 25th book in the Discworld series. And after, say, the first 6 or 7 books, after that he settled into a style that he was very comfortable with, and he just churned out one book after the other. Plenty of people have accused him of being very formulaic. I personally disagree. But here's a guy who actually he breaks the mold that I'm talking about. He sustains the same kind of mood and atmosphere, the same this weird optimistic misanthropism.
Yeah.
You know, this fantastic contrast, and he sustains that throughout the lunacy of wealth and the silliness of poverty. Everything is framed in this kind of, even the most bloody murders are framed within this really fun kind of sense of, it's all with nudges and nods and winks.
Yes, but if you're talking about it as a series rather than each individual story,
I am, yes.
He does have his departures from form. Anyone who's read Night Watch, or it was a dark drama. It was not a comedy. If you're talking about juxtaposition on this, they're such a departure from the normal Discworld novels that they might as well be in a different world.
There was comedy in there.
There was, but it was not a comedy.
He's definitely right. I mean, the comedic elements were still in there. Thank you for bringing up that example. The dramatic tone really did surpass the comedic background that was still present. It just wasn't as silly as the other books were, because the environment that he paints in the Discworld is really silly. It's really grotesque and kind of ridiculous. But yeah, he does break it.
I wonder why he doesn't need to give the breaks in the same way.
Sorry?
I wonder if maybe that's why he doesn't need to give the breaks in the same way during his books, because they're simply just, they're shorter, they're sillier. It's not the sort of thing perhaps that the reader needs to get relief from in the same way they would need relief from something that was very dark, very dull, very dark, very depressing.
It may also be that since the audience has absolutely no framework, no personal experience from which they can understand the world that he's creating, that it's less, there's less of their own personal world that they need a break from to read them. Because when you're talking about drudgery, everyone has worked that 9-to-5 shift and they don't want to remember it. Everyone has been in pain when they had to stand at in full formal dress at a funeral or at a wedding and
I can see where you're going. Terry Pratchett also talks about these subjects. He also talks about people who are in 9-to-5 jobs, or who have a very shitty boss, or who are faced with unreasonable problems. So why is it that those aren't such a problem with him? And there's an answer to this. So this is rhetorical.
No, I would say it's the absurdity of the world that surrounds them. It distances, or at least in my experience, it distanced me from the uncomfortable, familiar aspects of it and put me back into the adventurous world. Even when
it invites you to laugh at yourself, though. It invites you to reframe your own experiences, which are miserable, and actually see the lightness in it. And I think that, as your friend over there mentioned, that this is one of the reasons why he can sustain, Terry Pratchett still, why he can sustain this same kind of atmosphere, is because he actually delivers delight at steady intervals. And that's something that, considering his sales these days, we just don't get tired of. We kind of need a little bit of uplifting, just as much as we need more challenging fiction. And it's delight, it's pleasure. But we can get that from horror as well. You know, roller coasters are fun. Horror movies are scary. Some of them are really gross. And I'll never watch, but but in stories as well, it's a visceral thrill.
I'll look at the success of Dracula and Frankenstein. I mean, anyone who's read Mary Shelley's original works, or yeah, I mean, it's just as powerful then as it is in film.
Yes, definitely. And there's a reason that these sort of iconic, I call them iconic, it doesn't have anything to do with these iconic legends, which we can definitely call them now, still occupy a significant position in our collective cultural mind. And unfortunately nowadays they sparkle.
You could call them iconic. Here's an image of a patchwork man with bolts sticking out of his neck, pieces of different individual people all plastered together in one misshapen face. It doesn't matter what language or what society you're coming from, that's still horrifying.
It's horrifying. It definitely has an immediate response. But to understand, I mean, you wouldn't understand who he was. You wouldn't understand that he was a constructed man. And just seeing an image, you wouldn't understand that he was alive. But yes, it is definitely monstrous. But in the same way that a corpse is monstrous.
Right.
Leave it out in the sun for a couple of days.
Sorry, can you just as an icon of Frankenstein?
Well, that's what I mean. He was saying that those books were iconic, but that they're not iconic. But even when you say that,